Imagine being so unpopular that people keep signing petitions to fire you, and every time one gets debated in Parliament, another one pops up like a particularly persistent game of whack-a-mole. Well, you don't have to imagine it because that's exactly what's happening to Keir Starmer right now. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where we track the slow-motion car crash that is British politics. And today, we're talking about the third general election petition to hit major numbers since Labour took power. This one's already passed 70,000 signatures and climbing faster than your heating bills. And the best part? It's not even the biggest problem Starmer's facing this week. So, here's the situation. There's yet another petition on Parliament's website demanding that Keir Starmer dissolve Parliament and call a general election. Now, if you're thinking, didn't we just have this conversation? You'd be absolutely right. This is the third petition of its kind since July 2024. The third. That's not normal. Prime ministers don't usually face constant demands to call early elections unless they've done something spectacularly unpopular. And clearly, Starmer has ticked that box multiple times over. At the time the news broke, this petition had 72,000 signatures and was climbing fast. The wording is absolutely savage, too. It says the government has failed to defend our borders from small boats, that they have no confidence in how the government has acted, that pensioners and farmers have been directly affected by policies not in Labour's manifesto, and it ends with this absolute banger. Our country cannot go on like this. Dissolve Parliament and call a general election now. That exclamation mark is doing some serious heavy lifting there. You can feel the frustration radiating off the screen. Now, let's talk about what makes this petition particularly interesting. It's not just angry people clicking a button and moving on with their day. This thing gained serious momentum between Christmas and New Year's Day. It went from fewer than 10,000 signatures to over 50,000 in just a few days. While most people were eating leftover turkey and avoiding their relatives, tens of thousands were taking time out of their holidays to sign a petition demanding a new government. That tells you everything you need to know about public sentiment right now. And here's where it gets fun. If this petition hits 100,000 signatures, it gets considered for debate in Parliament's Westminster Hall. Not a binding debate, mind you, not one that actually forces anything to happen, but a debate nonetheless. And given that this petition runs for 6 months and doesn't close until June 10th, hitting that 100,000 mark is basically guaranteed. At the rate it's going, it'll probably hit it sometime this month. So we're definitely getting another parliamentary debate about whether the government should call an election. Again, for the third time in less than a year. But wait, there's more, because this isn't even the first rodeo this year. Remember that massive petition from 2024 that got over 3 million signatures? 3 million! That's not a fringe movement. That's a significant chunk of the electorate basically saying, we've made a terrible mistake. Can we have a do-over? That petition led to a debate in Parliament on January 6th last year. The government's response was essentially, thanks, but no thanks. We're busy fixing things. Spoiler alert, they weren't fixing things. Or if they were, nobody noticed. The Labour government's response to that previous petition was peak political non-speak. They said their full focus was on fixing the foundations, rebuilding Britain, and restoring public confidence in government. Fixing the foundations is such a vague phrase it could literally mean anything. What foundations? The economy? Infrastructure? Democracy itself? Nobody knows, and I don't think they do either. They pointed to efforts to fix the NHS, stabilize the economy, and secure Britain's borders. All very nice-sounding goals, but if you actually look at what's happened, none of those things seem noticeably better. In fact, some of them seem worse. Starmer's personal response to the 2024 petition was actually quite revealing. He said he reminds himself that very many people didn't vote Labour at the last election, and he's not surprised many of them want a rerun. But that's not how our system works, he says. There will be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place, so his focus is on the decisions he has to make every day. Now, on one level, he's absolutely right. That's not how our system works. You don't get to demand an election every time you're unhappy. But on another level, he's completely missing the point. These petitions aren't just from people who didn't vote Labour. They're also from people who did vote Labour and now regret it. That's the truly damaging part. And there's another petition, the second one, that's due to be debated by parliamentarians on January 12th after gaining over 1 million signatures. So just to keep score, we've had one petition with 3 million, another with over 1 million, and now a third that's racing towards 100,000. If you're the government, at what point do you look at this pattern and think, maybe we should reflect on why people keep doing this? Apparently, that point hasn't arrived yet, because the response continues to be, we're staying the course. Let's talk about why people are so angry, because the petition itself gives us some pretty clear reasons. First up, borders and small boats. This has been a political hot potato for years, and Labour promised they had the answer. They were going to smash the gangs, create a new border security command, and sort it all out properly. Instead, the boats keep coming, the numbers remain high, and people who care about this issue feel completely let down. Whether you think stopping the boats is important or not, the fact remains that Labour made it a priority and haven't delivered. That's ammunition for your critics. Then there's the pensioners issue, which is arguably even more damaging politically. Labour cut winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners. Millions! These are elderly people on fixed incomes who now have to choose between heating and eating during the coldest months of the year. And here's the kicker. This wasn't in their manifesto. Nobody voted for this. People voted Labour thinking their Nan would be okay, and then the government pulled the rug out from under her. The backlash was immediate and fierce, and Labour eventually U-turned. But the damage was done. You don't get credit for reversing a terrible decision, you just get slightly less blamed for it. The farmers' inheritance tax is the other major flashpoint mentioned in the petition. Again, not in the manifesto, again, a policy that directly hurts a specific group who weren't expecting it. Farmers are generational. They pass land down through families, often for centuries. Suddenly, slapping inheritance tax on them threatens that entire way of life. It threatens food security, rural communities, and a whole sector of the economy. The outcry was massive. Farmers literally protested in London. And once again, Labour U-turned. But once again, the damage was done. Now people know that Labour will introduce policies that weren't in their manifesto and will hurt vulnerable groups. That's not a good reputation to have. The pattern here is crucial. Labour is making deeply unpopular decisions, taking heat for them, and then reversing course. That's the worst of both worlds. You get all the political damage of doing the unpopular thing, but none of the potential long-term benefits because you abandon it anyway. It makes you look both cruel and weak. Cruel for proposing it, weak for backing down. Neither is a good look, and both together are toxic. Last year was genuinely turbulent for Labour, and turbulent is putting it mildly. Economic growth has been sluggish at best. The economy is supposed to be Labour's thing. They're supposed to understand working people and grow the economy in a way that benefits everyone. Instead, we've got stagnation, businesses struggling, and ordinary people feeling poorer. And when the economy isn't growing, everything else becomes harder. There's less money for public services, less money for investment, less money for anything. It's the foundation that everything else rests on, and it's not solid. Then there are the leadership rumblings. We've talked about this in other videos, but it bears repeating. Less than 2 years into power, people are openly speculating about whether Starmer will make it to the next election as leader. That's catastrophic for party morale and for his authority. Once your own side starts questioning whether you should be in charge, you're in serious trouble. And the poll ratings back up that concern. Labour's numbers are dismal. They won a massive majority in July 2024, and they've squandered the goodwill in record time. Some polls show them level with or even behind the Conservatives, who are still rebuilding after their historic defeat. That's how badly Labour has fumbled this. Starmer's New Year message tried to address some of this. He said the government would defeat the decline and division offered by others by staying the course. Staying the course is political code for we're not changing anything even though everyone's telling us it's not working. He talked about improving public services and easing the cost of living, which are great goals, but people need to see actual progress, not just hear about it in speeches. He warned that renewal isn't an overnight job and that the challenges were decades in the making. Again, technically true, but voters have limited patience for excuses. The fundamental problem is that Labour's strategy seems to be based on the idea that if they just keep going, eventually things will improve and people will give them credit. But that requires two things. First, things actually have to improve, which isn't guaranteed. Second, people have to have the patience to wait for that improvement, which in today's political climate, they absolutely don't. We live in an age of instant gratification and short attention spans. Asking people to trust you for years while things remain bad or get worse is a huge ask, and right now, nobody's in the mood to grant it. The petition itself is symbolic more than anything. It's not going to force an election. The government has a massive majority and can sit tight until 2029 if they want to. But symbols matter in politics. 3 major petitions in less than a year symbolize a government that's lost public confidence. They symbolize buyer's remorse on massive scale. They symbolize a population that feels unheard and unrepresented. And those symbols feed into the broader narrative that this government is failing. What makes this particularly dangerous for labor is that it's not just one group that's angry. It's pensioners, farmers, people concerned about immigration, people worried about the economy, people feeling the NHS isn't improving, people struggling with bills. That's not a narrow constituency. That's basically everyone. When you've managed to unite such diverse groups in their dissatisfaction with you, you've achieved something remarkable, just not in a good way. It's the political equivalent of being so bad at your job that all your colleagues from different departments come together specifically to complain about you. The timing couldn't be worse either.